midnight screams.
You have one new friend request. I don't know when Facebook introduced the feature. Friend suggestions. It used to be called, but now it's people you may know. A bunch of Facebook profiles suggested to you to add as friends. Usually people who have a mutual friends with you, or someone you've searched for in the past. What creeps me out is how accurate it is. It's clearly taking data from somewhere, because it suggested people to me that I've only ever interacted with in real life. The woman that cuts my hair, or the guy who does my taxes at H&R Block. Sometimes, though, it really is a random person that Facebook thinks I know for some reason. That's what happened on Thursday evening. A new friend suggestion. A.R. Winters. No mutual friends, no apparent connection to me. But this one caught my eye for a few reasons. First, the photo was of poor quality. It looked like a photo from the 90 seconds, something that had been developed on reel, film, and then scanned or photographed. Second, it had been taken from far away. The man, or possibly woman, was wearing dark clothing, standing against a tree so far away I couldn't make out their face. It didn't occur to me until just then, but generally, profile pictures aren't taken from that far away unless they're traveling and showing off some landmark. But this person was just leaning against a dead tree. Out of curiosity, I clicked their profile. All their info was hidden, though. No cover picture, no other profile pictures, no about me info. The next time I loaded Facebook, he wasn't a suggested friend anymore. It was just the usual never-ending wheel of 30-something women that had a smattering of mutual friends with me. So I forgot about it for a few days, until they popped up again. People you may know A.R. Winters. The same photo of them leaning against a dead tree. Or was it? As I stared at the photo, I realized they were standing straight up, no longer leaning. I could have sworn. I shook my head. They were so far away. How could I tell whether they were leaning on the tree or just standing underneath it? Later that night, I checked Facebook again. People you may know, A.R. Winters. One mutual friend. I froze. A mutual friend? The mutual friend was some girl I went to high school with. I didn't know her well, we'd been close in the 8th grade. But then she'd started hanging out with the more popular girls, and we lost touch. Still Facebook friends though, because I never went through my list of 2,000 plus people and pruned some off. It didn't say he had a mutual friend with her before, so they just became Facebook friends. Like today, this evening. Maybe there's someone from our school. Maybe they just joined Facebook for the first time, now. Or maybe they lost a password to their old account and are creating a new one. A few more days passed, and I didn't see A.R. Winters show up in my feed. But then on Saturday night, there they were. People you may know. A.R. Winters. 3 mutual friends. Not 1, 3. And the photo was definitely different. It was still the dead tree, the overcast sky. Everything looked exactly the same, except the person. They weren't against the tree anymore. They'd taken a few steps closer to the photographer. They appeared to be a woman, tall and pale, dressed in a flowy black shirt and long black pants, wavy, long dark hair, parted neatly on the left side. Because of the film quality, I still couldn't make out their face. Who is she? I glanced at our mutual friends. One was a guy I had chemistry lab with in college, and the other was our English teacher, Mrs. Flowers. She'd been the teacher mentor of our literature club, and she'd been dead for 5 years. I sat there, staring at the screen, all of it slowly sinking in. Her account can't even accept new friend requests. And why would this random person friend request her anyway? A horrible, creeping dread tugged at the back of my mind. I clicked on the 2 other mutual friends, Jessica, Marie, and Michael. Scroll down their timelines and, oh fuck, they'd also passed away. There hadn't been any official announcement for either, but their timelines were scattered with messages like, I miss you, in 2 years since you've been here. Quick Google searches showed that Jessica Marie died in 2020 from complications of COVID, and Michael had died in 2023 inches, a motorcycle accident. I clicked back to my feed, to the friend's suggestions, to AR's profile. I froze. She was standing closer, much closer. Her face was pale, almost pure white, like all the blood had been sucked out of it. Her eyes were dark, pupil and iris indistinguishable, and they seemed too big for her eyes. She had no eyebrows. Her long, dark hair twisted around. Her, as if there was a terrible wind. Blip. I jumped. There was a little red one over the bell icon. A.R. Winter sent you a friend request. My hands began to shake. I stared at the 2 buttons. Confirm. Cancel. I clicked cancel, closed out of the window, slammed the laptop shut. I sat there in the dark, panting. Sweat covered my arms. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Calm down. It's obviously just some stupid prank. The photo's probably not even real. AI. I pushed out a breath and got up, put on my hoodie, left the apartment and went for a walk. I shoved my hands in my pockets and walked along the walking trail at the local park. My breath came out in clouds of mist. I shivered. It was almost dusk, and the street lamps glowed across the road, orange, amber. Then I stopped. I'd never noticed it before. At the edge of the park, there was a big oak tree, barren of leaves now. But it looked just like the tree in AR. Winter's photo. A million trees look like that. Stop it. As I stood there, staring, something peeked out from behind it. A pale white face, dark flowy clothing, barely visible in the dying light. But I knew it was her. I knew. I ran back home, locked my apartment door, and opened the laptop. Went to Facebook. AR. Winter sent you a friend request. The profile photo. Her face filled the entire photo, right up against the screen, like she was staring right at me. And maybe it's just the stress, but I feel sick. Really sick. I've thrown up twice in the past half hour. My stomach hurts so much, more than I ever remember it hurting before. And I can't help but think, am I next? What went bump that night? So this is 100% a true story, exactly the way I remember it. This night was so traumatizing to me as a child that I remember it vividly, but thinking on it as an adult made me realize that it may have been more terrifying than I ever realized. This took place one night when I was really young, 3, maybe 4. I know I had to be super little because me and my 2 sisters were all still sharing a bed. Something had stirred me awake that night. My sisters were both still asleep. The room was dark, except the light from the bathroom shining through the bedroom door that was cracked open and left slightly ajar. This is what we used to use as a nightlight. As I lay there in bed awake, I see something in the corner, the same corner as the bedroom door, almost behind the door. That's kind of scary looking. I'm not exactly sure what it is, because it's dark, and it's in the corner, so all I really see is a silhouette. Now, even as a small kid, I was a rational person. I remember having the thought, it can't really be the scary thing I'm imagining. It's probably just some coats hanging in the corner or something. So I look at it closer. I stare at it for a good 2 or 3 minutes, really trying to figure out what it is, when suddenly it moves. Not a little or slightly, but full sprint. Not straight at me, thank God. It came around the bed to the opposite side of the room, blocking out the light from the bathroom as it passed the door, confirming something was really there. Since it came around the bed, leaving a straight shot to the bedroom door, I didn't hesitate. I probably never moved as fast. I screamed down the hallway. To the left, the dark kitchen. To the right, the living room. The only room lit up, except the bathroom. I ran into the living room, still screaming bloody murder. There was a little plastic Jurassic Park tent set up in the floor. I had gotten it for my birthday or Christmas. I hid in the tent, shouting at the top of my lungs. It was the most obvious place I could be. As thin as a kite, so it offered no protection. And if it wasn't obvious where I was just screaming out of pure terror. I definitely lacked survival instinct. My parents never came to check on me. They might have yelled out and asked what's wrong, but never came out of their room. And I rocked myself to sleep, screaming and traumatized in that tent that night. This has always been a scary event to me that I couldn't explain, and always said this was the one paranormal event that keeps open-minded. But looking back as an adult, with logic and reasoning, I thought, well, if it wasn't a ghost or something supernatural, what could it have been? I froze in a new level of fear as the thought entered my head. It blocked out the light. Something was there. If it wasn't a ghost, it had to be a person. It ran around the bed. Not at me, but possibly towards a window. My parents didn't react so, even with me sounding the alarm. Somebody could have easily slipped out. The thought to me is even more terrifying than if it was a ghost, along with the chilling thought of what could have happened if I hadn't woken up. What did I see? What did I stop? What was it that really went bump that night? This is again 100% true, and has been something I have pondered on a lot. It's an event that haunts my thoughts, so I thought I'd share it so that it might haunt yours as well. So what do you think it was? Was it a ghost? A person? Or do you think I'm making it all up? Something is inside my walls, and it is getting louder. I don't really know why I'm posting this here, but with all your scary experiences, I figured maybe someone could help me. I live in Switzerland, in a small apartment close to Zurich. A few weeks ago, I woke up in the middle of the night. I never do. I was very confused. I grabbed my phone, and it was 2 a.m. That is so unlike me. But I thought maybe there was a noise. You know how sometimes you hear something and turn toward it, but don't really register what it was? Happens to me sometimes. Anyway, I decided to just listen carefully. Maybe someone was breaking in, right? But it's really safe here, usually. And then I heard it. for the very first time. At first, it sounded like gas escaping somewhere, like a vent, I guess. But then it stopped. And now it sounded like it was sucking air in. Like it was inhaling. Like the walls were breathing. I thought maybe something was off with the heating. Maybe there was a leak? But that would mean it should be localized, right? Not moving? Because it was. It's since moved around the apartment. I heard it in the kitchen. Even on the balcony, I got quite scared. Maybe there's a marten in the wall? You know, kind of like a weasel? They're known for doing goofy stuff like that, similar to raccoons in that aspect. So I called a plumber. He was an old, big man, but when I told him the address, he got quiet on the phone. He asked if I was sure that this was the right place and all, and that confused me. My landlord gave me his number, said he worked in the area all the time. Anyway, he did come over, and he was very quiet. He didn't look at the heating. He just walked into my bedroom and started feeling up and down the walls. I said, maybe there's a marten in the walls? Those breathe, right? Haha. But he said that my heating is in the floor, and that the walls were solid, that nothing could be in there. It had been quiet for 2 days up until then, but suddenly it started breathing again. Louder now, much louder. It came from the kitchen. I turned to the plumber to tell him, and his face was frozen. I've never seen someone so genuinely frightened. It's back, it's back, it's back. We killed it, it's back. I didn't understand what he meant. Maybe I was right? They did find a marten here before and killed it? But that's horrible. I wouldn't want them to kill it. I don't mind a little breathing. He left right after, told me I needed to leave the apartment today, that I shouldn't spend another minute, much less a night, here. He wouldn't elaborate. And I said, okay, but where am I supposed to go? So yeah, my landlord didn't buy it. Said maybe the wrong plumber came over. Said it was impossible. He said they killed it. Maybe my landlord was a plumber here before, too? From plumber to landlord, what a career. Haha. Anyway, I'm sitting in bed with my laptop right now, and just remember to ask you guys, because something changed. It isn't breathing anymore. It's whispering. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street and softly whistles. You can only hear it pass from the living room or the kitchen, and the whistling begins at precisely 3 inches the morning. The sound starts faintly, somewhere down the block, near the Carson family's house. Our house is about halfway down the street, so for us, the sound grows louder as it approaches, then fades as it moves away toward the dead-end street. When I was little, my sister and I used to sneak into the kitchen to listen. My parents didn't want us to, and we'd be disciplined for sure if we were caught. But they weren't too strict about it, because no matter what, we always followed the one important rule: don't try to see the whistler. My neighborhood is a special place. The houses are small but well kept. Every home has a yard and nice landscaping, with plenty of places to play. There are lots of other kids my age. I just turned 13 this past October. We all grew up together, and our group was always out and about in the neighborhood. Sometimes we'd meet up at the dead end, where the whistler heads each night. Sometimes we'd play in the flower gardens during the summer. It's a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to realize that now. And there are only 2 strange things about it: the whistling every night and the blessing of this place. The whistling was never a problem for me. Like I said, from my bedroom I couldn't even hear it. But my parents didn't seem to like it, so I never asked too many questions. My dad is a tall, strong, and calm man. He has a bit of an accent because his family, my grandparents, came from the islands. He came to America as a child. The only times he ever seems to lose his composure is when the whistler comes up. Dad talks faster, his eyes dart around, and he reminds us not to worry about it and to always remember the one rule, the one big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler is passing. In truth, we couldn't look even if we wanted to. You see, there are shutters on every window, thick wooden panels that pull down to completely cover the glass and lock with a deadbolt. Below each shutter is an additional safeguard, a padlock that can only be opened with a small key. My father would slam the shutters down each night and lock them, then keep the key in his room. My mother, I don't know what she thought about the whistling. I've seen her in the living room at 3 a.m. when it starts. I could see her just by cracking my door open and peeking through the slit. She wasn't usually out there at that hour, or at least I hadn't caught her often. But once or twice a month, Mom would be sitting in the living room in our red armchair, just listening. The whistler always had a specific tune, a cheerful sounding one. Remember how I said there were two strange things here? Well, besides our nightly whistler, everyone in the neighborhood is incredibly lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about it much. But good things just seem to happen to the people who stay on this land. Winning a contest on the radio, or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding an ancient arrowhead in your own backyard. The weather is beautiful, and there's never any crime. And every family's flower garden blooms spectacularly into the fall. A million little blessings, my mother calls it, living here. But the main reason my family is here, the reason we moved here in the first place, was because of my sister, Nola. She was born frail. Nola was so small, I still remember, so tiny compared to other newborns. She needed a machine to help her breathe. We moved into this house to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved in, Nola's condition started to get better. The doctors couldn't understand why. They tried to explain it was their treatments, but we all knew they were just as confused. My parents, and even I, knew that. Nola getting better was just one of the million little blessings the neighborhood provided. That's why we stayed. Even after we discovered that for every wonderful thing that happens here each day, sometimes terrible things happen too. But the bad things only happen if you deliberately break the rule and go looking for the whistler. Our neighborhood has a welcoming committee for new families. They show up with a casserole, a gift basket, and an envelope to greet the newcomers. They're very friendly. 4 of them came to my house when we moved in 7 years ago. They asked a lot of questions, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was the first week she was allowed out of the hospital, so they were extremely careful. Then they wanted to talk to my parents alone, so I was sent to my bedroom, though from behind the door I could hear almost every word. They told my parents about the neighborhood's good fortune, about the good things that happened that were hard to explain. And then they told my parents about something even harder to explain. The whistling in the street at 3 a.m. that ended at exactly 3:05. The committee, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet and we would be left alone as long as we never, ever looked at what was making the sound. They were extremely insistent on this point, and I pressed my ear against the door, holding my breath to hear what they were saying. For those who went looking for the Whistler, their fates were altered, their luck vanished and twisted into something tragic. A dark cloud would hang over anyone who saw the Whistler. The worst things that could happen would happen. In the envelope they gave, my parents were newspaper clippings of various car accidents, fatal and life-altering, mysterious disappearances and bizarre accidents. Not all of them died, I heard the head of the committee say, but the life just seemed to drain out of them. Even if they were still alive, the light was gone from them. My mother. I could tell she wasn't taking any of it seriously. She kept asking if this was some kind of prank they played on new residents. At one point, she got angry, saying they were trying to scare us. She even asked if they were being discriminatory because my father was from the islands. My father calmed her down, saying he believed the new neighbor's story, that they were only trying to help us. Dad explained that he'd grown up with the supernatural stories his grandmother told, and that he believed in the strange things that exist in our lives. Some are good, some are bad, but most are just strange phenomena. After the committee left, my father went out to buy a few things: window shutters, deadbolts, padlocks, and he installed them immediately after dinner. On our first night in the new house, I snuck out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my father still awake, sitting on the sofa and holding my baby sister. When he saw me, he just put a finger to his lips to shush me and patted the cushion next to him. I came and sat down, and together we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. It came and went, just as the committee had said. The whistling returned every night, and we never looked. We just lived our lives and enjoyed our million little blessings every day. Nola gradually learned to breathe on her own and grew up to be a strong, smart girl. My father even joined the welcoming committee. We didn't get many new neighbors, and no one ever wanted to move away. But when a new family did arrive, my father and the other members would bring them a casserole, a gift basket, and an envelope. I could tell from Dad's face whether or not the family took the whole thing seriously. Not long ago, a family moved in right next door. The previous owner, Mrs. Moody, had passed away at the age of 105. She'd lived a long and happy life. It seemed our new neighbors adjusted to the place quite quickly. They completely believed what my father told them, heeding his advice to install shutters if they had children in the house. They believed all the newspaper clippings in the envelope, all the evidence, the pictures my father would never let us see. But I figured it must have been bad enough that the family followed my dad's advice without a single complaint. And one evening, when my new neighbors had to go out of town, they asked my parents to watch their young son. Holden, a 1-2-year-old, was a grade below me. I hadn't interacted with him much before, but as soon as his parents left after dinner, I could tell this kid was going to be a handful. Do you know about the guy who walks down the street at night and whistles? Holden asked me the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were in the living room watching some Disney movie on TV. My sister and I exchanged a look. "We're not supposed to talk about that," I replied. "I think it's that weird guy who lives in the big yellow house on the corner." Holden continued. "Mr. Torres?" my sister said. "No way. He's really nice." Holden scoffed. "Nice guys can still be psycho killers." Nola got tense at that. "We don't talk about it here," I repeated. "Come on, Let's go to my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and watching another movie. A normal kid's sleepover, but I could feel Holden was still fixated on the thing we weren't supposed to talk about. After my parents wished us goodnight, locked the shutters, and went to their room, Holden shot up from his sleeping bag and came over to where Nola and I were. "You guys ever try to peek?" he asked. "It's almost time." Like any kid's sleepover, we'd refuse to go to bed on time. I glanced at the clock and was startled to see Holden was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed and said, "We don't. See, I can't look out because my dad locks the shutters every night and hides the key," he continued, ignoring my warning. "Our dad does too," Nola said. "No," Holden replied. "No, he doesn't." "You saw him do it," I said, my tone firmer this time. Holden smiled. "Your dad locked the shutters, yeah, but he didn't hide the key. He just put it back on his regular keychain." "So what?" I asked, getting nervous about where he was going with this. "So because I knew your dad didn't bother hiding his whole keychain, maybe right after he locked the shutters but before he went to bed, I might have pretended to use the bathroom. And on my way, I might have glanced into your parents' room, and I might have seen him leave his keys right on the nightstand. And I might have snuck in and borrowed the shutter key." Nola and I stared at him as his grin widened. "You're lying," I said. Holden pouted. "You can go check if you want." "Just crack open your parents' door and look. You'll see a keychain sitting right on the nightstand." "Stay here," I told them. "Don't move an inch." I walked quickly toward my parents' bedroom, but stopped right before the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my father was going to be furious. Absolutely furious. The thought alone scared me. But I was more scared of the shutters being opened and the whistler being outside. I opened the door, just a crack, and peered inside. It was too dark to see anything. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room, 2 feet into the darkness. My body froze. The whistling began, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized they had to listen to this every single night since we moved here. They never told us. I don't think I could sleep with that sound. I stood there, listening to the whistle grow closer, not knowing whether to turn on a light or call out to wake my dad. A metallic click from the living room jolted me from my thoughts. "Nola!" I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door, right next to a window. Holden hadn't been lying. I could see from a distance that he was fiddling with a padlock. I heard another click. He had the key. Holden pulled the shutter up with a triumphant laugh. Nola stood right beside him, crouched low, scared, but also a little curious. The whistler was right outside our house. I think I made some kind of sound. Maybe I screamed. I can't remember. Time seemed to slow down. The clock on the wall was still ticking, but my body moved normally. I'm not fast, not athletic at all, but somehow, in an instant, I was next to Nola. My focus locked on her face as I heard Holden hoisting the shutter up. I heard the thwack as it slid fully open, and I heard the whistle, so close now, right on the other side of the glass. But I had Nola. I grabbed her, spinning her around so her back was to the window. In the same motion, I squeezed my own eyes shut as the view was exposed. A moment later, the whistling stopped. I could feel Nola trembling in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that her back was to the hallway and I was facing the window. I kept my eyes clamped shut, feeling her nod against my shoulder. I reached out with one hand, trying to find Holden. My hand found his arm. He was shaking even more than Nola. "Holden?" I asked, but was met with silence. I fumbled around and felt the window frame, eyes still shut, feeling the cold glass on my fingertips. It was surprisingly cold for this time of year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the shutter's pull cord. The air grew warmer as I reached higher. A low hum vibrated through the air, a wave of sound I could feel. I tried not to think about what was on the other side of the glass. Finally, my fingers found the cord, and I yanked it, slamming the shutter down. I opened my eyes. In the dim light from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, still staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turned to me and screamed. I was still in shock from what had just happened. Everything was a blur. Lights turned on in the hallway, then in the living room. The sound of my parents' footsteps on the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale, biting his lips so hard, a trickle of fresh blood ran down his chin, and it looked like he'd pissed himself. "What happened?" my father asked from behind me. I turned slowly from Holden to my dad. He looked. I had never seen my father panic before, but I saw it that night. In that moment, an old, ugly fear materialized on his face, a parent's fear. "Just Holden?" he said quietly to me. I nodded. My father let out a sigh of relief. He looked so relieved, I almost thought he was going to celebrate. But then he turned to Holden, and his expression changed. I wondered if he felt bad for being relieved that only Holden had seen. And then there was a knock on the door. We all froze. Holden started to whimper. "Nobody do anything," my mother said. She was standing near the hallway. I'd always thought my mom was a little skeptical and amused by my dad's barricaded windows and the whistler. But on that night, we were all believers. I noticed that both my parents were holding baseball bats they must have brought from their bedroom. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My father went over to the boy, putting an arm around him. "It's okay," my father promised, still gripping the bat. "Nothing is getting in here tonight." This time, the knock was so loud and hard, the door rattled in its frame. Holden shrieked, and Nola clung to me. My mother came over and knelt beside us, wrapping her arms around my sister and me. "Call the police," my mother whispered to my dad. The knocking abruptly stopped. My father looked back at us over his shoulder. "Do you think they could?" He was cut off by a series of sharp raps on the door, followed by light tapping. "Police! Police!" something said from the other side of the door. The voice was a perfect copy of my mother's, like a parrot mimicking her. "Police! Police!" My mother pulled us closer. "Police! Police! 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 Stop it, please." I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling the police will help us," my father said. "Even if they did come, how would we know it was really them?" The knocking returned, but even harder. The door vibrated violently, as if it was about to fall off its hinges. It stopped after a long moment. I heard more banging, but this time it was coming from the back door of the house. We all turned toward the back, and then the sound immediately returned to the front. Front, then back. Back, then front. Loud, then quiet. Loud, then quiet. Suddenly, the noise erupted from both doors at once. Loud, heavy blows, like a sledgehammer. Then something started hitting the windows all around the house, then the walls, as if we were inside a drum with a dozen people outside beating on it, or like we were a turtle and someone was trying to force us out of our shell. "Stop it!" Holden yelled. The banging stopped. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Please, go away." We waited and listened for about a minute. And then we heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap against the window Holden had looked through. Holden began to sob like a condemned man watching his own gallows being built. My father held him, stroking his hair, but he didn't try to lie. Never told the boy that everything was going to be okay. The tapping on the window continued for the rest of the night. We all huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mother tried to get the three of us to the bedroom, while my father stayed to watch the doors. The moment we stood up, the loud banging started again, so loud it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door would give way and splinter open. We returned to the living room and sat down, and the banging stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap continued. None of us slept that night. Around 7 a.m., the tapping finally stopped. That was about when the sun came up. We waited another 2 hours before my father pulled a shutter up from one of the windows. He sent us to his bedroom first and closed the door. I heard him open all the shutters in the living room before coming back for us. "Okay," he said. "It looks okay." Holden's parents returned to town around noon. My parents walked Holden back to his house, and they went inside for a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck close to me all day, right at my side, often holding my hand. When my parents came back, their faces were grim, but they didn't tell us what had happened. It was a Sunday, so we all stayed home, together. We ordered pizza and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and Mom were in bed with me, and Dad slept in the recliner. There was no more banging after that night. We didn't see Holden or his parents for the rest of the week, but on the following Thursday, a moving truck was parked in front of their house. Nola and I watched them carry their belongings to the truck all afternoon. What I remember most is the exhaustion on Holden's and his parents' faces. All three of them shared the same pale skin, the same dark lips, the same hollowed-out eyes. Even watching from across the street, I could feel that something was terribly wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remembered what the welcoming committee had told my parents when we first moved in. Not everyone who saw the Whistler died, but even so, the light of life within them was extinguished. And for the rest of their days, they would live in misery, in a million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, too, maybe to comfort him, or maybe to share the burden together. Sometimes I watch Nola happy and joyful and so full of life, and I think back to that night. If I had been just a second slower, if she had managed to look out that window, would I have looked, too? To comfort her? To share that burden? I'm glad I never had to choose. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. I still hear the Whistler pass by every night. But the blessings, the luck, the good things here, they are too much to give up. But we are careful. We don't have friends over for sleepovers anymore. And my father, since that night, has hidden the shutter key very, very well. Not that I've ever tried to find it. It's not something you should be curious enough to find.